Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fifth installment of our NGPA Up in the Air webinar series. My name is Brian Gambino, president of the NGPA. So happy all of you could join us today, approaching 500 live attendees in the event right now. Globetrotter, that song that was just on, what a great song to lead into today's webinar, because we all know we are dreaming about travel right now. I know that my passport is feeling neglected. I barely remember how to pack my bags, but hopefully that light at the end of the tunnel is shining, and we'll be able to visit some of the cities that song was mentioning on there. Like I said, this is the fifth installment of our NGPA Up in the Air webinar series. Our Up in the Air webinar series, it's a play on words for us. This is a multi-series event that's going to span about 6 months, and it's a replacement for our Industry Expo event that NGPA should have hosted just a couple of weeks ago out in Palm Springs, California. As we know, the pandemic definitely affecting in-person events, affecting everything about our daily lives. So unfortunately, we couldn't be there, but we are coming direct to your screens and bringing the information that you'd love to know about different aviation companies, different airlines, business aviation companies, as well as flight schools and different pieces of general aviation right to your screens to get the information that you need about the pandemic era challenges that are facing all of these companies and the whole entire industry that we love in aviation. Today's feature presenter, I must say, full disclosure, I'm a little partial to. I'll tell you, I'm a JetBlue employee myself. I'm the president of NGPA, but my full-time job is I'm a proud employee of JetBlue Airways. I've been with JetBlue for 6.5 years, spent 4.5 years on the Embraer 190 fleet. I've been on the Airbus 320, 321 for 2 years now, so very partial to my company and super proud to have them here representing JetBlue and supporting NGPA through our Up in the Air webinar series today. So I just wanted to get that out there and let you know that. But before we start with our whole team here that is from JetBlue, I'd like to tell you just a quick brief thing about NGPA. For those of you who aren't familiar, NGPA is the worldwide LGBTQ aviation community. We have a 30-year history here, 31 now, in fact, and we've had an organizational mission, which has always been simple. That has been to build, support, and unite the LGBTQ aviation community worldwide. We do that through our social programs. We do that through our advocacy work. We do that through our scholarship program, which awards over $150,000 on a yearly basis to budding aviation hopefuls so that they can fulfill their dreams in aviation. This year, the pandemic has greatly affected all companies, as I said, but nonprofits have really struggled getting through this as we've lost support from corporate sponsors. We've lost the ability to host in-person events, which have been such a major revenue stream for our organizations, which have supported our programs. So you saw those slides that we're shuttling through in the beginning there. We ask that if you can, please support NGPA. Please support our peer organizations at OBAP and Women in Aviation. You can do that by becoming a member. We welcome all members here at NGPA. So does Women in Aviation, so does OBAP. Check out their respective websites. OBAP.org, WAI.org, and for us here at NGPA, it's ngpa.org in the top central portion. You'll hit the join now. We would love to have you as a member, and we'd love you to continue supporting the services that we offer, just like this Up in the Air webinar series here. Enough from me. Let's talk about our feature presenter for the day. That's a company that I know and love, and that I'm sure many of you know and love. That's JetBlue Airways. JetBlue was founded in 1998 as New Air and commenced operations on February 11th of 2000, right before the horrible events of September 11th, 2001. They started and have remained as New York's hometown airline with a mission to bring humanity back to air travel. JetBlue has grown in its 21-year history to be the 7th largest airline in North America. In normal times, with over 265 aircraft, JetBlue flies to over 100 destinations throughout the United States, Mexico, Central America, South America, and of course, all throughout the Caribbean. And not too far off, JetBlue will be launching its first transatlantic services to London. Through their 5 core values of safety, caring, integrity, passion, and fun, JetBlue's over 21,000 crew members have led the airline to rank at the top of customer satisfaction surveys for the entirety of the airline's existence. Joining us today to talk more about JetBlue, we have an incredible team who are ready to discuss how they're handling the pandemic era challenges, how they intend to operate as they recover from the pandemic, as well as future growth plans, as well as provide pride points for the company's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Shortly, we'll be welcoming the team. Head of Revenue and Planning, Scott Lawrence, System Chief Pilot, Chris Lum is here, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Isema Gibbs, as well as Fort Lauderdale Airbus Captain, Tim Lusnar. But first, there's no better person to talk more about JetBlue and to talk passionately about JetBlue than the CEO himself. It's my absolute honor and privilege to be welcoming here to our Up in the Air webinar series, the CEO of JetBlue Airways, Robin Hayes. Robin, a very good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Brian. When you eventually finish flying, I think you'd be a great radio host. You've got a great voice for radio.
Oh, well, I've been told that before, and some people joke that I have a face for radio too. I think that's an insult.
No, I'm not going to say that. But anyway, thank you very much, Brian. Great intro. Thank you for everything you do and all the other JetBlue crew members on the call today. I thought I'd just run very quickly because I know you've got a lot of content to get through, and I'm happy to cover whatever everyone wants to hear. But I'm very excited to be here today. I see we've got over 500 participants, which is amazing. A little bit about me. I started in aviation over 30 years ago. I didn't take my first flight till I was 18. Actually, I wanted to work on trains. Still like trains, but I went with my girlfriend to Greece. I came back by myself because she split up from me while we were over there. But I still like the process of flying. As I say, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and it's been a real privilege and honor to work for JetBlue for nearly 13 of those years. So maybe we'll just sort of got a few things here. Hopefully that everything's projecting okay, and we can see. Brian covered this, but JetBlue was founded, as Brian mentioned, the team got together in 1998. The first flight was actually 11th of February, 2000. And, it was a guy called David Nealman's vision to create an airline that brought the humanity back to air travel. And what that really meant was creating an airline that offered better service to customers, but also coupled with low fares. David's core view formed at airlines he had founded before, like Morris Air, was that customers shouldn't be forced to choose. And I think we're still doing a pretty good job 21 years later doing the same thing. Now, we've had various forms over the years, but our mission, we kind of shortened it a little bit. We now say inspiring humanity, but it's really one and the same thing. Like, we believe fundamentally that aviation can be fun, and we can put a smile on people's faces, both the people that work for us, our crew members, but also our customers. So moving on to the next slide. Again, Brian, I think Brian did all of this, so he's obviously going to be doing my job before too long. But we have 5 days at JetBlue. When you join JetBlue, the first day you go to orientation at our training center in Orlando. We've all done it. I did it. I remember my course back in August 2008. I think a lot of companies spend a lot of time with consultants trying to reinvent the wheel. We basically got the same mission, and we've got the same values that we had when this airline was created. And have we changed? Yes. Is everything the same? No. Does everyone agree with everything we've done? No. But we try to sort of keep that. We kind of try to keep the values at the heart of what we do, and the values are safety, caring, integrity, passion, and fun. And I think they stand for themselves. But our pilots are so important to us being able to deliver what we do. And there's a motley collection of both pilots and also pilot uniforms over the years. Remember those dark blue shirts? And I remember when our pilots used to say they didn't like them because they were mistaken for TSA officers. But our pilots really are leaders in our operation. Yes, of course, the number one job is to fly that airplane safely, and what we do is inherently dangerous. There's a lot about flying that is very routine, but we also need to be ready for those moments when we know things will happen. And there was a great example, wasn't there, this weekend with that engine, what looks like to be an uncontained engine failure on that United Airlines flight, and just the magnificent skills of those pilots bringing that airplane back and everyone landing. And when those things happen nowadays, we don't think anything more of it, because they normally end really well, which is a credit both to professionalism of the people that built the airplanes, that maintain the airplanes, and obviously fly the airplanes. So our pilots are, again, more than just pilots. They're really leaders. They're the leaders when things go wrong, 3 in the morning, and there's not people like me around. Although there were people like me around, I still wouldn't know what to do. But they're the ones that have to lead the way. They're the ones that have to direct the crew. They're the ones that have to get things fixed. A number of diversions that we've had into airports that we don't even fly to, and pilots are coordinating everything at 3 o'clock in the morning. A lot of our pilots do so much amazing work in the community as well. And that, here's some examples here of the amount of work pilots, many of our pilots volunteer for and support through various community efforts. And we also have an open door policy here at JetBlue, and so any of our crew members, including our pilots, are able to speak to any of us at any time. And I will tell you, I probably get more emails from pilots than any other group in JetBlue. So that is alive and well.
And I can corroborate that, Robin, because I have emailed you in the past, and
yeah.
you responded to me within an hour. So I said I'd be partial to JetBlue since I work there. But thank you for responding to my email about 4 years ago. I appreciate it.
I do try, because my view is, I get so many emails, particularly these days, that if I don't reply quickly, I'm like, it's going to get buried, and then I'm going to disappoint someone. So again, I'm not perfect, but I try to. So moving into the pandemic. I don't need to tell you how big a deal this is. And I want to tell you a quick story, because it happened a year ago tomorrow. On the 25th of February 2020, I was in London. And I was in London for a couple of reasons. But one of the reasons I was in London is we had a lunch scheduled with the CEO of Airbus, because the topic du jour back then was the tariffs. The Trump administration had started putting tariffs on our Airbus airplanes, and obviously that was a significant issue for us. And so we met in London, and I was also visiting a couple of the London airports. Brian mentioned that we're going to start flying there later this year. So, and we had that lunch, and we were talking about tests. We barely mentioned coronavirus. In fact, I think over coffee, I said to him, are you guys seeing any impact with the coronavirus? And he said, well, some of our Chinese airlines are starting to see things. And wow, boy, I flew home the next day on a British Airways 777 out of Gatwick, and it was nearly empty. And then a week later, there were less people flying in the US in the domestic system through security than there were the same day a year before. And a month later, we were at 5%. So when we came into this pandemic, the first thing we wanted to do was protect our operation, right? We knew we had to continue to operate airplanes. There were talk of shutdowns, but we knew that wasn't going to happen. And what was JetBlue doing a lot of back then? I mean, who was really flying in April 2020? Medical workers. And New York was the center of the pandemic, and airlines like JetBlue, but not just JetBlue, other airlines stepped up as well. We were flying people into New York to give much needed support to all the healthcare workers here. So we had to keep flying. And yet, our crews were understandably nervous. This was an invisible virus. We had no idea, you remember back then people saying you had to, wash your oranges and leave your bags outside for 2 days. I mean, we really had no idea back then how this thing was transmitted. So we needed to make sure that both customers and crew members felt that we were going to be safe. And we didn't wait for federal mandates. We were the first airline to offer customers free changes. We were the first airline to mandate face coverings. We were the first airline to keep the middle seat free. So we took a very proactive view during that whole process. But the second thing was maintaining our JetBlue's financial security. We had to make sure that we came out the other side. And we wanted to also continue to do our best to deliver the commitment we've given to our crew members in 21 years that we have never furloughed. We didn't know back then if it was definitely going to be possible. This was before we got government money or anything else like that. But we worked so hard with all of our crew members, in the case of pilots with ALPA, to put things in place that gave crew members the opportunity to take time off that they wanted, but no one would be forced to be furloughed. we looked very hard back then about grounding our 190 fleet. I mean, it's only 10% of our capacity, and we were under a lot of pressure to do that from investors and others. But we felt there was a better way. So it was about maintaining JetBlue's financial security, but also all of our crew members. And I'm very pleased to say, touch wood, a year into this nearly, that so far we've been able to deliver on that commitment. And I think, other US airlines have not furloughed, it's true, but they have sent out furlough notifications at various points, which we haven't even done. So we're, again, we've been very proud of those efforts to try to protect the jobs of our crew members, whilst also making sure JetBlue would come through successfully. And then next slide. So, look, we're not out the woods yet for Q1 this year, so 2021. We're still forecasting revenues to be down 65 to 70%. We do expect Q2 to be better than Q1. We're definitely seeing some encouraging signs now of pent-up demand. I did a trip down to Florida last week. I flew into Miami and out of Key West because we've got new airports we've opened down there, and I just wanted to see the operation, and the flights were full. I've never been happy to be on a full flight, and everyone was great. The flight crew were great, the in-flight was great, airports was great, and so we still got work to do to get through this, but we also decided to be aggressive. So, and Scott will talk about this a little bit, but since this pandemic started, we've announced flying to over 80 new markets. We announced a partnership with American Airlines, which is going to allow us to grow our LaGuardia footprint by about threefold. So going from 16, 17 flights a day up to 50 to 60. It's allowing us to probably triple, maybe between double and triple our presence at Newark. And it's going to give us the ability to grow Boston and improve our timings at JFK, because American has a bunch of slots that they really just sit on with small regional jets. And so that's going to help us accelerate the recovery. But we're also excited about flying to London. And also we have 26 airplanes on order for European flying. We see the same high fares and opportunity to disrupt flying to Europe. I mean, again, before the pandemic, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 fares to Europe for business class, ridiculous. We're going to come in, we're going to change that, just as we did with our Mint product on the Transcon back in 2014. And we've now shared details of the new business class product. You can see we've taken the next generation of Mint to the next level with private suites for everybody. And people will see those not just on our London flights, but start to see them in the domestic operation as well. I mean, it's going to take some time because we don't really want to spend a ton of money on the moment retrofitting airplanes. But over time, a lot of our Mint fleet will need to be gauged. And we're also talking to the Port Authority and the partners in New York about an extension of our JFK terminal, so we can have room for growth for JetBlue, but also bring some of our long-haul international partners into the same facility to reduce connecting times and be able to compete better with Delta at JFK and obviously United at Newark. So lots of exciting things to come as well, but we couldn't do this without our crew members. We never forget that. And it's been quite a ride for 21 years, but we're excited. And I think once we get through this pandemic, some really great times ahead at JetBlue. So with that, I'll hand over back to Brian, or maybe straight into Isema.
Robin, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you being here and giving that great summation of what's going on at JetBlue and the exciting things that we have coming for our company. So Isema Gibbs is here, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, as well as Corporate Social Responsibility. Isema, you have some stuff to tell us about some pride points of all of our inclusion programs here at JetBlue. Welcome.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for having us. We're excited to be here and excited to share some of our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. I am so excited, though, that the pilot photos had some of my CSR work as well. So we are making sure that we mix the two of these areas, both diversity, equity, inclusion, and corporate social responsibility, where there's intersectionality. We're happy to see that. So welcome to everyone. Thank you for inviting us once again. I am Isema Gibbs, the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Corporate Social Responsibility. I have been with JetBlue since before we have planes. So I haven't been here since 98, but I did start in 99, and it has been an absolutely incredible ride. Next slide, please. So I want to talk to you a little bit about our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. One of the things that we're working on is to make sure that JetBlue becomes courageous, inclusive, and bold in our voice. And we really want our crew members to feel a sense of belonging. And that's all crew members, right? So how do you create a sense of belonging? You have to make sure that everyone understands their value and is able to bring their authentic self to work every single day. So that's what we're striving for. Our mission within DEI is to contribute to JetBlue's growth and sustainability by embedding the shared and unique identities, backgrounds, and perspectives of our crew members and our customers and communities in the way that we do business, right? So how do we do that? We make sure that we are speaking with one voice, that we are speaking with a unified voice, and that we are really working to have a holistic view of both our of all of our diversity and make sure that we are talking about it in a bold voice. And those are the two things that we're working on at JetBlue diligently: being bold and being inclusive. Those are the things that we're that DEI is striving for. Next slide, please. So as we look to how we're doing that, there are three areas that we're focusing on: crew members, community, and customers. And I have to say, since the beginning, crew members have been the focal point of everything that we do. So how do you attract and retain talent that represents not only the customers and the crew members, but the communities that you serve? That means you have to be inclusive, right? You have to cultivate a workforce that really looks like your overall population, especially when we go to so many international destinations and we're in New York. New York is the melting pot. And so our leadership team and our crew members should reflect the customers that fly us. How do we show up in our communities? We want to grow cultural awareness and be more reflective and sensitive to the communities that we serve. We want to build trust among the communities that we serve. And we want to make sure that, of course, we're leading with our values in all that we do. And then let's talk a little bit about our customers. How do we build a cultural nuance so that our product offerings and our relationships extend across a diverse group of our customers, and make sure that we have that we are showing that JetBlue wants to be the most inclusive travel partner there is. And we're working on that. We're not perfect, but that's really the direction that we want to go. So there's some things that we're doing that we're really excited about. One of the things that we're working on for our crew members is we have degendered our uniform policy. And so our crew members have requested this. We made sure we put this in place. And late last year, we degendered our uniform policy. We're really proud of that. We're working on some other things. We want to be able to have how you identify yourself on your name tag. And so these are things that we feel help to build a more inclusive culture here at JetBlue, but they're also things that we think our crew members and customers will appreciate as well. Next slide. So one of the things that we're really excited about are our crew member resource groups. So I know most people call them employee resource groups, but everybody at JetBlue is a crew member, so we have crew member resource groups. And I have to say that our Pride resource group was the first. And not only were they the first, but they have really extended allyship across all of our crew member resource groups. The Pride organization within JetBlue really works to make sure that they tap into all of our resource groups and tries to do initiatives with all of them. And so when this seminar started, I was so happy to see that you all also were reaching out to both OBAP and Women in Aviation. That's how affinity groups remain strong and by bolstering each other up. You have to be a unified front, and I have to say that Pride has led in that initiative at JetBlue since the beginning. So some things I'd like to highlight and talk about is that we hosted a virtual drag show that raised thousands of dollars to support the BIPOC community, charities in the BIPOC community. And that happened in 2000, last year, right after George Floyd. Our Pride CRG stepped up and said, listen, how can we help? And they did the fundraiser, which was absolutely amazing and a lot of fun. We've hosted some volunteer voter information workshops to make sure that we get our crew members out to vote and give them all the information they needed. And Pride, once again, was leading the way. And then we hosted a COVID-19 vaccination session. We featured doctors. We want to bring awareness to our communities. Specifically, some of our diverse communities are a little apprehensive about taking the vaccine, and that stems from some long, deep-rooted distrust for the medical community. And so we're really trying to help educate not only our CRGs, but our crew members, and taking that outside to our customers. How do we make sure that people understand the importance of this vaccine? So those are some of the things that we're working on as it pertains to our crew member resource groups. I know that we only have a little bit of time, but I really wanted to say that we at JetBlue are far from perfect. I think Robin mentioned that he was not perfect, and we're as a company aren't perfect, but we really are looking to find our authentic voice. And we want to make sure that our crew members feel a sense of belonging here. You can have diversity, you can have inclusivity, you can have equity, and if you don't have belonging, then none of it matters. And so we want our crew members to feel a sense of belonging here, and that's all crew members. We want to make space for everybody to show up as their authentic self. So looking forward to hearing the rest of the panel. I know Scott Lawrence is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Isema. Thank you for the work that you do. It's so important, and listening to some of the takeaways that you had, like just what you were talking about now. There's so many companies out there that talk the talk, but do they walk the walk? Do they do the things necessary to bring that belonging to their crew members? And I mean, it's smart business. When your crew members are happy and they feel validated and they feel welcomed at their company, they are going to make customers happy. When customers are happy, the bottom line of the company is going to go upwards. So and we see it regularly. So many people will ask, and I'm sure that you see it regularly as well, like, well, why does Jet Pride need to exist? Why does Vets in Blue exist? We're fully open and inclusive to LGBTQ community. We support our troops, we support the vets, we support women in flight. But then you go to some of these message boards that are out there and you read some of the things that these same people who say that they're so inclusive then talk about behind the guise of a message board handle. And you realize exactly why we need all of these groups, exactly why we need that camaraderie between our affinity groups. So thank you for the work you do. You make our job easier here at NGPA, and I appreciate you greatly. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
The man of the hour with all the information about what JetBlue is doing to make pandemic era changes in terms of our route structure, Scott Lawrence. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brian. And it's really good to be here. I will say that it's interesting to hear Isema and Robin sort of both say they're not perfect. I know I'm not perfect, although I will say that in our organization, Isema is as close as you get. And if nothing else, she's proven with me over the years that she's quite patient. So, look, I think at a values-based company, which is exactly sort of everything you've seen so far, it's funny how the juxtaposition in terms of how we run the business and what we do moves into the commercial world. This is really different than any place I've ever been. This is my third airline. I've been with JetBlue now 13 years, but I was at United and US Air prior to this. And, I will say this sort of, walk the walk is real. And, I'm really proud to have been involved with a couple of our crew member resource groups. It's been something for me that has been, really important. It's helped me become better, frankly, at my job, because, again, you sort of gain so much in terms of, understanding what makes JetBlue special and what drives us, which again is our crew members. So, as I sort of transition from that into, how we've worked through this pandemic, the first thing I would say is, look, this has been a really humbling experience for us. Robin talked about a year ago. I think about the first 2 weeks of this, I kept resisting the pandemic. I looked for any information that sort of said, listen, this will be a flash in the pan. This will go away. It's not, I just sort of, it's like if you take a cat and you hold it above the bathtub. That was my view of this, like anything that we could to sort of say this wasn't going to be an issue. And I think that's not a good way to start a crisis, because I think once we embrace this, I also am really pleased and really proud with our result. And then while it's a difficult and humbling experience, we have been more nimble than anybody else in the industry in terms of how we've approached this. Robin talked about 80 new routes, talked about, things that we've done with other airlines. We've changed the structure of how we generate revenue with new fare options, moves, and things like that. We've been really, really aggressive in terms of our approach to this. So, as we get into this, if we move forward a page here, you just get an idea. With our map, we talked about, how JetBlue, and Brian did a great job initially talking about, where our network goes. But, what's interesting here is the darker lines here, I guess the orange, those lines represent what's new since we started the pandemic. That looks like just a network. We have done so much. And the reason we've done that is twofold. The first is, we came into this, and the reason that I resisted it so much until it became obvious that we were really getting killed at the beginning of this this pandemic in terms of our commercial work was that we had really awful COVID geography, right? I think those of us here in New York, saw that initially with just how impactful things were when it became clear how New York was being impacted by COVID. And if you look at New York and Boston together, that represents 2/3 of our network. And so, we came into this in the most impacted area. And then, as we moved through that period of last March and April that was so devastating, and we looked for our business to try to recover, the next thing we found was, as we started to recover, we took actually another step back in that the key parts of our network had recovered, but other areas started to see increases in spikes. So we saw a spike of cases in the Sun Belt. And what that resulted in was, the movement toward, travel quarantines in New York and Boston, which, that sort of hit us twice. And so, again, we had to adjust a lot of what we're doing to orient more, our network more toward leisure customers. Again, we saw some opportunity in terms of working with American Airlines and getting access to some of the places that Robin talked about at LaGuardia, dramatically growing in Newark. We actually moved around and sadly closed the Focus City in Long Beach. But again, that allowed us to open up a larger operation in Los Angeles. And in doing so, it sets us up for the future. And so as we move through this, we've made a number of tactical decisions with an eye toward our recovery and a strategy that will allow us to come out of this and move forward and recover faster than other airlines. I think one of the things that we're fortunate with, I talked about sort of the difficulty of having poor COVID geography. I suppose the good news is that we know that leisure-oriented customers are going to be the first to recover, and we're already seeing that now as bookings begin to recover. We built our airline around leisure. We built our airline to serve people going on vacation, and then we have been building a business presence, but that really represents a small portion of our airline. So, again, I think we're well set up to come out of this very quickly. We're well set up for growth, and we've kind of staked our claim on that. And again, I think as we look forward, it's something that I have a great deal of confidence in, and we're starting to see a lot of that come to fruition. And, again, part of this is about being nimble, and part of it is about being creative. And so some of the dots on the map that you see, flying from Bozeman to Fort Lauderdale, and just recently we announced things like Kalispell, Montana. It's interesting. I don't often stump Robin Hayes, but when I came to him in his office and I purposefully just left the Kalispell city code, FCA, on the presentation sheet, and he said, "I don't know where that is." And he's never said that to me before, and I sort of enjoyed it, and took it as meaning that we got some level of creativity. I actually think, and I can see Robin's face right now. Even after I told him it was Kalispell, he didn't know where it was, but he didn't admit that to me. But look, again, that's the kind of thing that in a COVID world where we see recovery, people looking for places to do sort of outdoorsy type things, sort of less traditional travel. And so, we've made a series of those decisions while also being good to the core of our network and making sure that, we retain our leadership positions in our focus cities. So if we go forward, I think you get a good idea here on some of the things that we've had to do. And, some of these have been really difficult. And, sort of our pre-COVID world of sort of how we develop schedules really focused from 9 months out to sort of 3 months before a flight flies. And after that 3-month period, we really used to focus on never touching the schedule. But in the depths of COVID, we got right up to the point where we were bidding, making schedule changes right up to when the bid, and actually sometimes even within the bid in some of the more crisis-oriented points. And so we were making a number of sort of close-in schedule changes up to 3 to 5 days before a flight flew. I think a couple things about that. That was really a portion of the crisis that we were making decisions to make sure that we managed our cash balance as a company. But we were making decisions there that I'll be honest, we weren't thrilled with, because as a customer, if we cancel your flight 2 weeks out, that's not a great experience. And I think one of the things that we've had to balance here is, reacting to flying a flight that might have 8 or 10 people on it versus making sure we're taking care of our customers. And so, I'm pleased to say that we've gotten out of some of those close-in cancels and are making very few of those now. And I think as we've seen some stabilization, we've been very proud of our approach and taking a nimble approach to this and making sure we're doing right by managing short-term cash and managing through a crisis. But we've also combined that to a much more customer-friendly approach. And again, I think as a values-driven company, that's what we tend to look to do, because at JetBlue, Robin talked about David, and I think about founders at JetBlue like Isema. We have to be good stewards of that here. Those are people that founded this company that captured lightning in a bottle. This place is special, and it's different than any other airline or any other company. And so whenever we start to run afoul of some of these customer experience issues, this is not airline X where you would just do that and say, well, it's for the good of the company. We have to be good stewards of that, because again, there are so many things that make JetBlue special. It's hard to sort of look at any one or two of them and say, well, if we eliminate this, we'll still keep that. So again, we've seen customers change their behavior. We've adjusted to that, and now again we move toward recovery. If we go forward for a second here to the next slide, what I would say is, just to give everybody an idea, we've got sort of 3 interesting approaches here to give you an idea of how we think. The first is, as we start to recover, is this about the breadth or the depth of the network? In other words, is it about recovering into a place where you move back to flying 12 flights a day from New York to Orlando? Or is it about having more cities and providing customers more options? Because the demand profile does not allow us to fly a ton of frequency right now. And so what we've done is we've added a number of cities and options for customers, and that's worked really well for us. And I would sort of highlight on February 11th, sort of opening Miami, opening Key West, as we move to open, new cities this summer. Again, that's been highly beneficial for us. The next portion of this is just sort of how we position our company, in terms of our cash position and balance sheet and sort of how we run the company, to be able to go on the offensive and, again, to come out of this crisis stronger relative to the industry. And then, the last piece of this, I talk about this concept of depth and breadth and sort of, where we go to our core network versus new geography. We have used this crisis as an opportunity to move into that new geography, to leverage the relationship with American, do other things that we've wanted to do for some time and move into geography that we've coveted. That sets us up for success, and it's something that we're really pleased with. So, with that, I'm not sure who I hand back to. I think
I got it, Scott.
All right, Brian.
Take
thank
it from
you.
here. No, thank you. Thank you for all that information. I remember in the only 6.5 years that I've been here at JetBlue, it was always exciting every 6 to 8 months to get a new Blue City announcement. And now we're getting a new Blue City announcement. I'm getting more emails from Scott Lawrence to all the entire company this past year with new Blue City announcements on a regular basis, which are very exciting. I'm flying Miami next week and then
Awesome.
the Miami LA. So I'm excited to do that.
All right.
No, but thank you for leading and for really capturing business where we need to capture business in a time that has been so devastating for our airline. Thank you for being at the forefront of all that, along with the executive leadership team. So truly appreciate your commentary, all the pocket sessions, and all the info and great things and positioning you're doing for JetBlue. So appreciate it, Scott.
Thanks, Brian.
Next up, our system chief pilot here at JetBlue, as well as captain on the Airbus from Fort Lauderdale. I'd like to welcome to the webinar Chris Lum and Tim Lusnar. Chris, Tim, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Brian. Thank you for having me. And yes, as Brian said, I'm an Airbus captain. I'm actually Boston-based. I lived up in New Hampshire, and the palm trees you see behind me is actually I'm on a family vacation right now in Turks and Caicos. But I was not going to miss this event for the world. So thank you very much for having me. Jen, if we can move on to the next slide. I know we're a little behind, and you want to get on to some question and answers, but I did want to touch on a couple of exciting things we have going on right now for our pilots. Just last week, we started our very first class for the A220 line pilots. So as you may or may not know, we delivered our first A220 on New Year's Eve, 2020. And it is going to be going into service, revenue service here shortly. We're going through the proving run process, any evacuation drills we need to get that aircraft certified. And our training has already begun for our line pilots, which is pretty exciting. We are going to a 3-fleet aircraft type airline, which is something new and different for JetBlue and quite exciting. Additionally, as Brian mentioned and has been talked about earlier today, we are starting our London service in August. And as such, we are holding a supplemental system bid actually next week, March 1st, for the initial cadre of pilots who will be flying those flights for us. So the aircraft is going to be the A321LR. As has been discussed, the type rating is actually identical. The training required for the LR is a simple online computer training. However, we do need an ETOPS certification to utilize the aircraft more effectively. And therefore, that cadre of pilots who are going to be ETOPS qualified to fly transatlantic is going to be a separate sub base within our base in JFK and Boston. So we are holding a bid for that in March. It's going to be approximately 49 captains in the initial bid window, and then expanding up to, I believe, about 58 captains total, and a total of just under 80 first officers. The reason for the difference there is going to be augmented flying. So we will carry an additional first officer in the jump seat to conduct that flying. It helps boost our legalities and ensure that we have the crew rest required in order to do this operation. So very exciting times as far as that goes. Transatlantic is going to be a big push for us, and we're really excited to get that into the operation and get the bid out there for this flying. I know it's going to be very interesting to see just how much that diversifies our pilot group as far as seniority goes, and who is going to be interested in doing that transatlantic flying. It's quite different from what we've been doing thus far in the career of the airline. And lastly, before we move on to Tim, I just did want to touch on some COVID response. I took the acting system chief pilot role in March of 2020. So I basically was thrown into the fire right away. Took the role officially in September, and I vividly remember the meetings with the senior leadership team trying to figure out what COVID tests were and what a PCR was and what an antigen is. And I have gotten more medical education in the last year than I ever thought I would. So we've taken a lot of initiatives that have impacted the pilot group, including creating a mask, which is uniform compliant. So we have our very own JetBlue mask which the pilots have access to. We've come up with policy and procedure around testing, policy and procedure around COVID vaccinations. Obviously, the FAA requires that 48-hour wait after getting the vaccine. So we've had to come up with some unique ways to manage schedules to ensure that anybody who wants to get the vaccine is not unable to do so because of their schedule. So we've created some unique and creative ways to keep that process flowing and ensure that everybody who would like to get a vaccine has the ability to do so. It's actually a really exciting time. We're working our way through the downturn and sort of coming out the other side. And I'm really excited for the future here and all the new things we have coming. With that, I do want to turn it over to fellow classmate and A320 Captain Tim Lesnar to give you just a quick insight on the day-to-day flying of a line pilot at JetBlue Airways. So Tim.
Thank you, Chris. Great to hear from you and my colleagues. And thank you, Brian, and thank you to the NGPA for hosting this webinar. And of course, to all the attendees, it's very nice to have you with us today. Again, my name is Tim Lesnar. I'm a captain in Fort Lauderdale. I'm flying the Airbus A320 and A321. I started JetBlue in 2010, so just over 10 years I've been here. And it's been a great company to work for. They've been very inclusive across all work groups. I love the shared values and practices and goals that our company has, and our leadership has had a real tough go this past year with COVID, and I think they've handled it very well. So I'm very happy to still be employed here at JetBlue. And right now I'm on reserve. I choose that a long call reserve. We have short call reserve as well. Some months I do get a line. We do have reduced flying right now due to COVID and a reduced schedule. But overall, this is a great company to work for. I'm very happy to be here. And anything that I can answer, I'll be more than happy to do so.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to the whole JetBlue team, from Robin to Isima to Scott to Chris and Tim. Appreciate you giving us all this information and really taking us through what's going on at JetBlue, where we're going, how we're dealing with this crisis. Now, there's tons of questions coming in already on the question and answer portion. So we're going to open it up to the audience now. Over 500 of you, oh my goodness, 509 right now. We'll be taking a bunch of questions. They're going to range from live questions to as well as questions that are coming in our question and answer box. So if anyone right now is interested in asking a question live to the JetBlue team, you can look at the bottom of your options there on your Zoom screen. There's a raise hand function. You can hit raise hand. Otherwise, you can put your questions into the Q&A box and we'll be asking those for you. And anyone on the JetBlue team, if you all want to join us now on camera, and whoever wants to take the questions to this, feel free to jump right on in there. There's a ton of them. I'm going to start first with a question that has been coming in. We probably had about 26 questions and they're all mirroring this. This is going to be in regards to folks who have already gone through an interview back in 2020. So we've had the question both for in-flight, our flight attendant positions, pilot positions. Anyone who was interviewed and has entered past phase 1 and was in phase 2 or got a conditional job offer which had to be rescinded, can anyone give some guidance on what is going to happen to those folks? Will they be the first to recall, or will they have to go through the application process again in the future?
Ryan, I can go ahead and take that one. And first off, thanks for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to connect with the community. And as everyone's really talked about, there's just so much on the horizon for us. We've got a ton of activity that's positioning JetBlue for strength and to emerge from the crisis. And with that means hiring will come back. But we do need to think about how that's going to happen and take the appropriate steps cascading into that. So for those that already have gone through the first initial phases, we do intend to connect with them initially and continue moving the process forward with those groups first.
Awesome. Thank you, Yannick. And welcome, Yannick. We didn't say hello to you before. You weren't with us earlier. So hello, and thank you for joining. Yannick's from the talent acquisition team at JetBlue, a very popular man once hiring does definitely kick back in here. Thanks for taking that. We're going to go to a live question now. First, we are going to welcome Shane McKenna to the webinar. Shane McKenna, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone and go ahead with your question to the JetBlue team. Good afternoon, Shane, and welcome.
Hey, thanks, Brian, for hosting again. It's been great. I attended the virtual Vets in Blue back in the fall, which was outstanding. The questions for Chris and Tim as pilots. for your culture, for your company, what stands out to you as a pilot, as a highlight, and why somebody would choose JetBlue over, say, another airline?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Shane. I think for me personally, it's the engagement of the pilot group for all things that the company is looking for. And I'll give just a personal example and then another example. But you don't have to just be a pilot at Blue, and that's what I love about it. You have the ability to do so many things at this airline that may be completely out of your wheelhouse, but something you just want to try. And the ability to go to the pilot group and to sort of seek out subject matter experts on things that may have absolutely nothing to do with stick and rudder flying of the aircraft, I think is pretty phenomenal. I started out as a pilot recruiter about 9 years ago, shortly after I was hired here, and have done a little bit of everything. I ran a nonprofit that we have here at JetBlue for our pilot groups, the Blue Pilot Fund. I've done a little bit of everything, and I think that's really what I love most about this airline is their willingness to sort of embrace all crew members, and to find talent within before sort of looking outside the box. And the example I always use, and I wish she was here with us today, is Bonnie Simi. Bonnie Simi is an E190 captain who was president of JetBlue Tech Ventures in Silicon Valley, and has done just about everything at this airline, from talent acquisition all the way through. And you sort of, when you talk about a JetBlue pilot, you can say they started out as just a line pilot, and they become all of these other things within the organization. And I love that about this airline. I really do. You can do as much as you want at this airline, and no holds barred. Tim, what about you?
Well, I was a new hire mentor here at the airline, and I do know that we have new hire mentors that are former military pilots. And I know there is a bit of a transition. I'm not ex-military myself, but I do know that we have a lot of military pilots here. And there is a bit of a transition coming from the military going into a 121 scheduled carrier. So we do have mentor pilots that are ex-military that make that transition so much easier. And I got to say, what makes JetBlue special? Well, I'll tell you, after 10 years, I still enjoy coming to work every day I step on that airplane. Everybody I work with, the gate agents, the airport operations, the ground operations, everybody is a team, and we work together very well as a team, and we all have one value, we all have a great value of our 5 core values, and the shared values that we use here at JetBlue. So it's been a great experience for me. And as I said, every day I go on that plane, it's a phenomenal experience. I really enjoy coming to work every single day, even after 10 years. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Tim. And Shane, thank you for your question. Scott, Robin, this is probably going to be in your area, maybe Scott specifically. A lot of questions coming in about the West Coast. Can you talk more about what's going on in Los Angeles? And is there plans for another West Coast domicile somewhere else?
Well, I won't touch on the domicile as we look at now, because obviously we've just sort of moved and expanded Long Beach and LAX. So I think that's going to probably be the limit of what we do in the short term. But we have definitely grown in the West as we move through COVID. And I think the first piece is we've talked about going to 70 flights a day at LAX is something we're really, really excited about, because we were limited by slots in Long Beach to sort of the 31 was sort of the max that we could hit there. So I think the first thing is we're able to fly more and not be constrained by slots. And the second piece is we've started an international operation out of LAX as well. And it's really responded nicely. It's something we should have been doing a long time ago, but we could not make that happen in Long Beach without an FIS, a customs facility. The other thing on the West Coast is we've also seen San Francisco respond very well for us during COVID as well. We added service to places like Cancun, other points from San Francisco. And, what I would say is the dynamic for us has been international and transcon have responded very nicely. I think the places where we have not performed as well traditionally have been intra-West markets. And we still do have an intra-West presence from LAX. And that's something that we are likely to retain. But I think the one piece of this is I don't think you're going to see JetBlue going forward being the carrier that's flying, 8 times a day from San Diego to Portland or Seattle. But I do think that you're going to see us continuing to develop our transcon franchise and our international flying, particularly from Southern California, but to a lesser extent from Northern California, or well, from the Bay Area, I should say, as well. So, I think for those of you that are very interested in the West Coast, I think there's a very bright future there for JetBlue. And, again, look, this is something that internally comes up a lot because we have a number of people that are interested in domiciling on the West Coast. And I certainly understand it. Here in the middle of the winter in New York, I get it. But again, I think, the growth there is going to be slow and steady and focused in Los Angeles.
Cool, great. Thank you, Scott. Robin, a couple London questions coming in. Obviously, you're not going to share exactly where we're going in London. That'll be announced at a later date. But is there anything on the horizon for when we're actually going to publish London schedules, or going to make the formal announcement of tickets going on sale for our operation?
Yeah, no, great question. We're currently assuming Q3. So that would mean that we would need to load the schedules at some point in Q2. I would say we're taking a little bit of a wait and see at the moment because, as you may know, the UK has introduced a fairly strict quarantine that requires people to quarantine at home or for 10 days, and from some countries from hotels. At the moment, the US is not on the hotel list, but that could change. I'm confident the UK is making great progress with their vaccine. Their 7-day death rate is down 40%, which is terrific. And so, I'm confident that the UK will move to a model where they will ask for proof of vaccination as a way to bypass the quarantine. They're talking to technology partners now about doing that. And I think that'll be a green light for us to say, okay, we now feel confident that we're going. Honestly, we don't want to start London and be flying empty airplanes across the transatlantic. The other thing, the US administration, they have something called Section 212F, which was the prohibition that last administration put in, meaning that UK and EU citizens can't fly to the US. And so we need to get that lifted as well. So again, I'm confident both those things are likely to happen as we go into spring, early summer. Once we have better line of sight of that, we'll sort of load the schedules. And look, as we said, we have a path. We have slots at Gatwick if we need them. We've got slots at Stansted. We actually have an ability to fly to Heathrow. We're just not sure whether we have the ability to stay there long term. So, we'll probably come to a final decision around that around April.
Great. Thanks for that, Robin. Aaron DeWitt, we're going to welcome you to the webinar here with a live question. Aaron, you can unmute your microphone down on the bottom left and go ahead with your question live to the JetBlue team. Good afternoon and welcome.
Hi, thank you for putting on this event. I really appreciate it. I was able to attend the Vets in Blue webinar in the fall, and it really was a great event as well. I have two questions actually. One, how can military aviators help themselves stand out during the application process? And two, what types of interview processes do we see moving forward? All in person or virtual or some type of combination thereof? Thank you.
Yeah, Brian, I can take that one. And Aaron, thanks for joining us for Vets in Blue as well. I can tell you it has been really interesting for us to put on just events like these, when we're used to being in person, seeing each other and shaking hands. So I think a couple of things. One, when it comes to standing out as a military aviator. So first and foremost, thank you for your service. We really do pay special attention to every applicant and really take in not only the type rating they have and the hours that they have in for the not just the mins, but the competitive mins. So there are a lot of different factors that go into that and the scoring models that we use. So we can certainly zoom in more. But one of the things that for us is really special is that when you do apply, when you do reach out to the team, to just let us know, and let us know about your service. And we have special groups for military as well that we will plan to reach out to when hiring comes back to just make sure that our veterans are informed of opportunities as they emerge. So one of them is just being a part of that community when we do put it together later this year when hiring comes back for our pilots. So the second thing is how are we going to do this, right? When hiring does come back. So we are looking at a hybrid model. So for a way for us to engage appropriately through format, but also find a really safe and thoughtful way to connect in person. We haven't cracked the code on it yet, but it's a critical priority for us. But it will be a hybrid model when we do get back to hiring.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Yannick. I know we are already over time. We had such great information here. I know Chris, Lum, and Tim have already said that they can stick around longer. Scott, Robin, Isima, Yannick, I know that your time is very precious. So if you have to jump off, feel free. We've got a bunch more questions that we are going to get to here. Big question that everyone is asking is, this is going to fall into the hiring portion again for Yannick and Chris, pilot hiring. What is the forecast that you can kind of, that you're digesting right now in the midst of a pandemic? When can you expect to see JetBlue opening up a pilot application again?
Yeah, I'll take the first half, and then Chris, maybe over to you if you want to add some commentary. But I'll say and echo a lot of the sentiment that you've heard today, right? Commitment number one is to our existing crew. We really want to continue to focus as flying comes back, right? Ensuring that all of our pilots are having access to lines and the ability to fly to the degree that they're excited about. And so that's going to be step one. But with that, right, with the routes that you've heard about and all of this new flying, we have to begin hiring again. And so part of that is understanding the right timing for it. And as we think about what that means, right, maybe later this year or early next year is what we're starting to think about. As we get closer to those dates, we'll be sure to let our hiring communities know. To find out more, stay close, right? Stay close in this network, and also on our career site, you can sign up and sign up for access to alerts to be alerted when we do make those postings. So, Chris, over to you to see if you want to add the commentary there.
Sure. Yeah. It's such a challenging environment right now to try to predict something like that. And I know, just the pilot in me sees Frontier and Spirit and some of the other airlines announcing that they're going to begin their pilot hiring, and we're all very anxious to get that started here, I can assure you. But as Yannick said, it's important that we get ourselves into a position where we as an airline are comfortable and are confident in how we can move forward before we start making those jumps. The pilots are one of the most expensive resources we have, and it's important that we are sound and confident in our future before we pull that trigger. But when we do, please know that the environment is not all that different than when we went in. I get a lot of questions. We have a lot of furloughed pilots out there now, and what does that mean? Are the minimums going to go up? Are we now, those of us that were hired in the regionals just recently now not as competitive as we would have been 2 years ago? I would say that we're still in the midst of a pilot shortage here. COVID delayed it, and we've all been hearing about it for years. And I feel like it's the proverbial can that keeps getting kicked down the road. The age 65 rule came out and got kicked 5 years, and now COVID hits and it gets kicked another 2 years, but it's still there. So for those of you that are on the street right now, that are looking for jobs, that have been furloughed from the regionals, or maybe just getting recalled, we're with you, and we recognize that is a challenge that is certainly not your fault, and you are certainly just as experienced as the rest of us. So please know that we're not going to hold that against you when those times come. JetBlue is going to take every consideration into effect and into account when we do start our pilot hiring again.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Yannick. Definitely something that everyone's very concerned about. Such a tough time when you were, all it was an upward trajectory, especially in the piloting, in the piloting field across airlines. Then all of a sudden for it to basically come to a screeching halt. It's tough, especially when recency of experience is a big issue, and folks who were flying and were at a regional that shut down and couldn't get on anywhere else. So definitely a tough time. And it's good to know that JetBlue is keeping that in mind and keeping an open mind as we welcome back hiring again, to know that there will be a place for folks who haven't had the opportunity to continue doing what they love for the past year or more. Isima, a question for you. In terms of the ERG groups, or our employee resource groups and our JetBlue equals, with the inability for a lot of in-person contact, have you seen a downturn in participation across these groups throughout JetBlue?
You know, quite the contrary. We did several groups and several events in 2020, even in this virtual environment. We are getting ready to host one of our signature events called Fly Like a Girl with Women in Aviation, where we introduce aviation to young women under the age of 14. And so the CRGs came together and did a tremendous job in 2020, continuing to engage our crew members. And actually in 2020, we got an application for a new CRG, so which was surprising. So we haven't seen a downward spiral at all. We'll be excited to get back together in person, but we've been doing a pretty decent job virtually.
That's really good to know. And here at NGPA, I can say across our membership, we've actually, in our time apart, I almost feel like we've never been more together. It's been via these screens and Zoom screens, Microsoft Teams and whatnot, but I've seen more faces. I've been able to connect with 4 of our members this year, and that's good to see that that's happening across the CRGs at JetBlue as well.
And it's also happening
Scott,
with volunteering as well. No, I was going to just add, it's also happening with volunteering. People are still finding ways to give back to their community, even in times like these. So it's really, it's a testament to who we hire at JetBlue and who our crew members are.
And we hope that still stays as it is, even when we go into a post-pandemic world and we get back to normalcy. Scott, this one is for you. Pretty cool question here. I'm curious to know how JetBlue's current block hours compare to last year. I'm guessing they mean in 2020. And how does that compare with other carriers that compete in our same markets?
Okay, it's a great question. So I'm going to go, let's see here, let me think for a second to make sure I get the right answer. So block hours tend to mirror where we go with capacity, so overall ASMs, but there's a little bit of change here. So if I'm off by about 5%, don't hold me to it. But basically, as we move into April, we'll be at about 70% of 2019 levels. If you look at us, and again, we track the capacity, so the available seat miles. We tend to be domestically right in the middle of the pack. And again, the reason that we're not flying more, you know, a carrier like Spirit, for example, right? They're up to 90%. They talk about getting back to 100%. I will say their Florida geography has definitely helped them. So, you know, our geography, you know, our numbers are a reflection of our geography a bit. If you bring in international, that really skews things because the legacy carriers have just not been able to fly the level of long haul international capacity because of the restrictions. So some of them are flying all cargo operations, but even that is very difficult to pull off. It's hard to even cover cash on some of that stuff. So again, on domestic, we're middle of the pack. If you sort of take all system, we tend to move up a little bit and be at a higher proportion of our block hours versus 2019.
Cool. Great. Thank you for that answer. I know we are now at 5:10 Eastern time, which is well past. We're going to take one more live question and then we'll wrap things up from here. So let's see. One man show over here doing this. Michael Bond, welcome to the webinar. You can go ahead and unmute your microphone. Go ahead with your question to the JetBlue team. Good afternoon, Michael.
Since I'm the last man standing, I'll make it nice and fun. Born and raised in Forest Hills, Queens. Disappointed you guys moved. As a future JetBlue pilot, I got to put you guys on Front Street. You guys call yourself the New York airline, the hometown. How come we don't see a New York Yankees aircraft?
That's definitely yours,
like
Scott.
I'll take that one. All right. So first things first, I would hate to screw up our brand by having the Yankees. You know, good God, I can't imagine anything worse. You know, the real answer is there is an airline that has thrown money away sponsoring the Yankees. It's the carrier ending in ELTA. And if you want sort of a long-term sort of entitled sense of superior fandom, then talk to Delta. But I will say that, you know, JetBlue being the official airline of the Red Sox, we're very pleased to have that. But look, overall, kidding aside, you know, sports sponsorships are going to be something that, you know, we put a lot of emotion into, as you could tell from that answer. They've been very effective in the past. I think that it's going to be interesting to see as we come out of this, how airlines approach stuff like this. Because, you know, I will say our most, with the kidding aside on the Yankee side, our best sports sponsorship has been the work we've done with the Red Sox. I suspect that our friends at Delta probably get a very similar return on their investment with the Yankees. God, I can't even say it, with the Yankees. Look, I think we do have a Jets airplane, and if there is a sports team in Boston that we're unaware of, at this point we're gonna be taking the Natick Little League teams and painting airplanes after them. Anyway, so that's where we go. So I hope I have offended the Yankee fans out there. Actually, I hope I have offended the Yankee fans out there. But I'm sure your smugness and sense of self-entitlement and worth will get you through.
Scott, you're gonna have to deal with my mother. My mother is on this call right now. Born and raised in New York, even though I live in Chicago now. But Eileen Gambino, I see her supporting me. She said that she's already has it out for whoever the Scott Lawrence character is. So she is a diehard Yankee fan. No, nice to end with a little bit of comedy there. There are so many more questions here that we could probably spend hours chatting about, but in respect of everyone's time, we'll wrap it up here. Such great information handed off today from the team at JetBlue. So many exciting things happening at a company that I, of course, love and that I plan to be at for the entirety of my career. So on behalf of everyone in here at NGPA, I just want to say a big thank you. Thank you to Robin. I know he had to jump off. Thank you to Scott, to Isema, to Chris, to Tim, and to Yannick for joining us. Jennifer, I know you're in the background as well, running some of the tech, as well as Luke Schneider, NGPA's own operations coordinator, running what we have going on here as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the LGBTQ community. Thank you for supporting all minority groups and for supporting all of your people at JetBlue, your team members, and making it an absolutely outstanding company to work for. Chris, did you have something to say?
No, not at all.
Sorry.
I just wanted to thank everybody. I did put in the chat my email address. Any pilot specific questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. It may take me a little while to get back to you, but my email is in the chat. If you need anything, I'm here.
And thank you for doing that. We are going to be putting up a slide right at the end here that has 2 websites that you can go to for information on JetBlue that you can monitor for when JetBlue does open the pipeline for hiring again on the flight ops portion as well as the in-flight. There's already, I think, when I saw today, over 73 open positions right now at JetBlue for different areas of the company, and you can check all of those out on the websites that you'll see shortly. For those of you who are interested in more of the Up in the Air webinar series, we will be back same place, same time next week on March 3rd. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern. Our friends at Southwest Airlines will be joining us to talk about some of the changes over at their company as well. So on behalf of the entire NGPA Board of Directors, my executive leadership team, and all the volunteers and members here at NGPA, thank you, JetBlue. Thank you to the team. Thank you for everyone who's participated today. Have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and can't wait to see you all again in person sometime soon. Those websites coming at you right now from all of us at NGPA. Take care. Have a great week.